stated that while hotel accommodation is ideal and desirable, sometimes people hiring the aircraft negotiate for lower cost of accommodation. In this case, members of the crew are given daily subsistence allowance. It was received in testimony that at Mzuzu Airport, it is, as is always the case, the airport police provided security for the aircraft from the time it arrived, and it was parked at the apron. It is in further evidence that on this particular day, 4 airport police officers were assigned to guard the aircraft overnight, and these were joined by 2 Malawi Defense Force soldiers as additional security. The Commission heard that it is the practice for the military to provide additional security when a Malawi Defense Force aircraft lands at Mzuzu Airport for an overnight stay. It is in evidence that apart from the 4 who were stationed on the apron with the 2 MDF soldiers, other airport police officers were deployed in 2 groups, with some assigned to watch over the runway, while others to watch over the boundaries, as Mzuzu Airport does not have a perimeter fence. The aircraft was guarded until morning, when the crew returned to the airport. The Commission had evidence that during the night of the 9th June 2024, no other person came close to the aircraft from the time the aircraft was parked on the apron to the time the crew returned in the morning. At the end of their night shift at 6:00 hours on 10th June 2024, the on-duty airport police officers reported to their supervisor, the officer in charge, that there was nothing unusual or prejudicial to the security of the aircraft that night. The 2 Malawi Defense Force soldiers handed over the aircraft to the crew in the morning with similar observations and left. On procurement of the Malawi Air Force T-03, the Commission received evidence from Dr. Sikwese that procurement of an aircraft for use by the late Vice President previously commenced with a memorandum from the Office of the Vice President to His Excellency the President through the Office of the President and Cabinet, requesting the use of the military aircraft and stating the purpose therefore. Once His Excellency the President approves the request, the Secretary to the Vice President writes the Malawi Defense Force to commence the procurement process. The Commission received evidence from Dr. Sikwese as well as from Mr. Eric Yesaya, Principal Secretary Administration in the Office of the Vice President, that this practice was changed through a memorandum to the effect that whenever the Vice President wanted to use the aircraft, they should deal with the MDF directly. The Commission requested for the memorandum, but it was not provided. When the Commission inquired the same with the Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Madam Colleen Zamba, she indicated that no such memorandum had been issued since she assumed office in June 2022. The Commission observed that if indeed there was such a change in the policy, then the date on which such a change was effected could not be ascertained. The Commission, through the evidence tendered by Dr. Sikwese, established that on 2 occasions, on 2nd May 2023 and on 25th March 2024, the late Vice President made specific requests to His Excellency the President to use military aircraft. However, in between the said dates, there is no proof of such memorandum to His Excellency the President from the late Vice President for requests to the MDF for use of a military aircraft. On 4th August 2023 to Kalonga, on 14th August 2023 to Mzuzu, on 17th August 2023 to Mangochi, on 15th September 2023 to Blantyre, on 30th September 2023 to Mzuzu, and on 2nd November 2023 to Mangochi. The Commission received testimony from the Air Force that procurement of an aircraft from them follows established standard operating procedures. The process starts with, firstly, the MDF headquarters inquires from the Air Force headquarters in Dongwe to ascertain whether any of their air bases has an aircraft that would be available to carry out a proposed operation. Once the Air Force headquarters confirms availability of such an aircraft, the MDF headquarters informs the Air Force headquarters to assign the air base, which will conduct the operation. This is done through an air transport order issued to the air base. The air base then responds with an operations order detailing the equipment available and dates and routes for the operation. Once approved by Malawi Defence Force headquarters, the airbase then issues its cost estimates incidental to the operation. The Malawi Defence Force headquarters then sends the cost estimates to the party requesting the aircraft for settlement. Once the flight is confirmed, the airbase assigns the crew to take on the operation. In accordance with the said procedures, it is in evidence that in the present case, the procurement of the aircraft commenced on 9th June 2024 when the Malawi Defence Force Commander General Dr. Paul Valentino Piri received a phone call from Dr. Sikwesi requesting him the use of the aircraft. It is the testimony of the Malawi Defence Force Commander that Dr. Sikwesi called him around 15-20 hours from Chileka while returning with the late Vice President from South Korea. During the call, Dr. Sikwesi informed the Malawi Defence Force Commander that aircraft would be used by the late Vice President to travel from Kamuzu International Airport to Mzuzu to attend the funeral of late Kasambara Senior Counsel in Katabe the following morning on 10th June 2024, and then return on the same day by 12:30 hours in time for the late Vice President to see His Excellency the President off to the Bahamas. The Malawi Defence Force Commander told the Commission that his initial reaction to Dr. Sikwesi was that there was no aircraft available, as it had already been chartered the day before by the late Mr. Kasambara's family. He then advised Dr. Sikwesi to perhaps talk to the family to see if they could consider letting the aircraft carry out the proposed operation. The Malawi Defence Force Commander also recalls mentioning in the discussion with Dr. Sikwesi that the weather in Mzuzu was not good. Following this interaction, it is in evidence that Dr. Sikwesi spoke to a representative of the Kasambara family who confirmed that they had no problem releasing the aircraft for the late Vice President, planned travel as scheduled. After confirming availability of the aircraft, a new air transport order was forwarded to the Air Force headquarters and then to Zomba Air Base through the base commander, Colonel Alex Mwachande. In that regard, all the required formalities, such as the cost estimates for the mission, were done, and logistical arrangements were out in place. The air transport order was formally issued on 10th June 2024. It is in Dr. Sikwesi's testimony that it was agreed between the Office of the Vice President and the Malawi Defence Force that formal documentation would follow later. Once the crew flying the MAF 303 landed in Mzuzu at around 18 hours on 9th June 2024, the crew was informed by the Operations and Training Officer from Zomba Air Base, Major Amin Kalinga, that about this new air transport order and mission. The journey from Mzuzu to Kamuzu International Airport. Around 6:15 hours on 10th June 2024, the crew members arrived at Mzuzu Airport for their mission to Lilongwe. As customary, the crew received a weather report from the Senior Aerodrome Flight Information Officer at Mzuzu Airport, Mr. Joseph Moyo, who was acting as the air traffic controller at the airport, as Mzuzu doesn't have an air flight controller. The weather report was prepared by the airport's meteorological office. The report showed visibility was less than 8 kilometers and it was foggy. Mr. Moyo testified that he spoke to both members of the crew before they departed for Kamuzu International Airport. He noted that they both looked normal and fine, and there was nothing strange with them. The first officer, Major Selemani, filed a flight plan as shown under Annex 4, which indicated the normal route to Kamuzu International Airport, known as Whiskey or W601. After all the formalities, the aircraft departed Mzuzu at 7:05 hours and headed to Kamuzu International Airport with an estimated time of arrival of 7:50 hours. It was received in evidence that the flying time from Mzuzu to Lilongwe on this aircraft and vice versa was typically 45 minutes. The aircraft had 3 crew members on board and its call sign was AF88M. It was stated in evidence that there is a radio detection and ranging, radar, at Kamuzu International Airport, which is used to track aircrafts in its controlled airspace. In respect to this flight, it was in testimony that MAFT-03 was able to transition from Mzuzu into the uncontrolled airspace and then into Lilongwe controlled airspace without a problem. The radar at Kamuzu International Airport was also able to track down MAFT-03 as it entered the Lilongwe airspace until it landed at Kamuzu International Airport at 7:48 hours. The journey from Kamuzu International Airport to Mzuzu. It was the testimony of Mr. Sokosa, the duty forecaster at Kamuzu International Airport, that the crew did not request a weather briefing from the meteorological office at Kamuzu International Airport. It was this evidence that at the time they were finding the flight plan, the crew did not get the weather forecast for neither the return flight path nor for Mzuzu. The Commission received in evidence that such information is only provided by the airport meteorological services only upon request by the crew, as per the standard operating procedures. However, at about 9:00 hours before the aircraft departed, the crew received a weather report from Kamuzu International Airport Air Traffic Control Tower via radio frequency 128.0 MHz. It was the testimony of the senior aeronautical information officer at Kamuzu International Airport, Mary Chirwa, that she had a conversation with Major Seremani, the co-pilot, at the time she was filing the flight plan from Mzuzu. And this is found in Annex 5. According to her, the flight plan that had been filed indicated that the crew was going to use a direct route to Mzuzu, as opposed to the usual W601 route. This prompted her to ask Major Seremani as to why they had decided to use the direct route instead of the normal route. It is in her testimony that Major Seremani responded that they had decided to use a direct route because on their flight from Mzuzu Airport to Kamuzu International Airport, earlier on that day, they had encountered bad weather on the normal route W601. The flight plan further indicated that the aircraft was to maintain an altitude of 9,000 feet above mean sea level. The flight plan was sent to Kamuzu International Airport Control Tower and Mzuzu Control Tower by the senior aeronautical information officer. The aircraft was refueled by the vendor who is contracted to refuel aircrafts at the airport, which is Puma Energy Limited. It was the evidence of Mrs. Laika Chibwana from Puma that 483 liters of Jet A1 aviation fuel was filled into MAFT-03 at Kamuzu International Airport. On 9th June 2024, 294 liters of Jet A1 fuel from the same tanker was filled into an aircraft registered as 7Q-ULL belonging to Aviation and Regional Services. After the MAFT-03 had refueled, a BEA 350 aircraft belonging to AML Global, registered as N823CJ, was filled with 532 liters of Jet A1 fuel on the same day. The other aircraft reached their destinations without incident. She stated that when she heard about the aircraft accident, she immediately collected samples of the Jet A1 fuel as per standard operating procedure. In case the samples would be needed. She explained that at the time of giving her evidence, nobody had requested for the samples. It is worth noting that on the day of the departure from Kamuzu International Airport to Mzuzu, there was a difference in the flight passenger manifest from the previous day. The flight passenger manifest that was presented the day before had Madam Mary Chidima and Miss Gloria Mtukule as part of the entourage. However, they did not travel to Mzuzu on the 10th June 2024. It was Madam Chidima, Mary Chidima's testimony that she did not travel because of her doctoral assignment she had earlier alluded to. She sought leave from the late Vice President to remain behind to work on her assignment to enable her to submit the same before the deadline. Having remained behind, it inevitably meant that Miss Gloria Ntukule also remained behind with Madam Chidima. being her close protection officer. In that regard, there were 6 passengers on the flight to Mzuzu instead of 8 and 3 crew members. During his evidence, Dr. Sikwese confirmed having received a call the previous night from the Secretary to the President and Cabinet inquiring if there was space in the aircraft to accommodate Honorable Chimwendo Banda. Dr. Sikwese confirmed that he advised the SPC that the aircraft was full because at that time there was no indication that Madam Mary Chirima and her close protection officer were not traveling. Dr. Sikwese further confirmed that he did not see Honorable Chimwendo Banda at the airport the following day on 10th June 2024, as he was seeing off the late Vice President at his entourage. It is in evidence that before MAF T03 took off from Kamuzu International Airport, the crew called Mzuzu Control Tower to inquire about the weather. They talked to Mr. Moyo in the control tower, who advised them that at that time the visibility in Mzuzu was more than 8 kilometers, which was fair for visual flight rules. In such flights, the pilot relies on visual navigation of the aircraft and looks through the window and windscreen to see where he is going and landing. The opposite to the visual flight rules is one that is called instrument flight rules, or IFR flight. On this one, the pilot relies on the instruments in the aircraft and on the ground for navigation and landing. In this, the instruments in the aircraft communicate with the instruments at the destination airport for landing. The Commission received testimony that Mzuzu Airport has no instrument to effect the instrument flight rules landing. In that regard, during flights from Kamuzu International Airport to Mzuzu Airport, the pilot flies the aircraft initially using the IFR or the instrument flight rules from Lilongwe, and then as they approach Mzuzu Airport, they change to the visual flight rules. It was received in testimony that aircraft was scheduled to depart from Kamuzu International Airport to Mzuzu at 9:00 hours with an estimated flight time of 45 minutes. It is in the evidence of the duty air traffic controller, Mr. Magombo, that at 9:05 hours, AF 88M requested and was given airport surface data via radio on frequency 128.0 MHz. It's a call sign that was changed from AF 88M to Malawi 2, as it was carrying the Vice President of the Republic of Malawi. When the MAF T03 took off from Kamuzu International Airport, the air traffic controller at Kamuzu International Airport informed the senior flight information chief officer at Mzuzu Airport about the estimated time of arrival, and that the aircraft had fuel endurance of 4 hours. The endurance was verified by the Kamuzu International Airport Puma Energy Office. It is in evidence that the aircraft was given takeoff clearance from runway 14 and was airborne at 9:17 hours. The pilot in command was Colonel Sambaropa. Let me now invite Commissioner Sunduzwayo Madise to continue. Thank you.